The next thing that we're looking at is on page 14, which is working out the line between 2 points. So we've got another formula that we're going to learn now, which is called the gradient point equation of a straight line, which is there written in front of you. Y minus y1 equals a in brackets x minus x1 close brackets. So you're already familiar with A, that's our gradient, and we're going to be using x1 and y1, which are going to be points on a particular line. And then if we know our gradient and a point that passes through that line, we can actually work out the equation for a line. So for example, if you had a line that looked like that, and you knew the gradient here, say, equaled 2, and you had this particular point, okay, that lay on that line, something like 3, 5, for example, then using your gradient and that point, we can work out the gradient from that line, and so it would have the general formula of y equals your gradient times x plus where it hit your y-intercept. And this formula does that all for us. So let's go about how we do this. So we need to have one point and we need to have a gradient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through an example with you on in your book. And so the example that I have got, I'm going to do the second example, minus 2, 5, and a gradient of 3 to begin with. So the first thing that we need to do is label our coordinates x1 and y1. So then you know exactly the first term is always our x term, the second term is always our y term, and then we know our gradient is equal to 3. So we've got that information. The second thing is write down the equation. So let's write that down. Y minus y1 equals a x minus x1. And what do all these terms mean? Well, we're going to substitute our gradient in here. We're going to substitute our y values. So we've got y1 going in here and x1 going in here. So sorry, I just made a mistake there. That should have been a 1 there, not a 2. And then we'll be left with these x and y's, which will form our general equation. So let's now substitute into the equation as our third step. So y minus y1, which is 5. Just remember if there's any negatives when you're substituting to add those in as well. A equals 3, x minus, and here's our minus 2. Okay. Remember a minus and a minus make a plus. So if we just write that out so it looks a bit neater, it's in that form. The fourth step is to expand the brackets. Okay? If you don't expand the brackets, you'll miss out a step. So just keep your equal signs under each other. Keep just following those down, carrying them down until we're going to use them. So expanding, one of our basic skills, 3 times x makes 3x, and 3 times plus 2 makes plus 6. The next step is to gather all the number terms on the right-hand side. So you're left with y equals something. So here we go, we've got y equals, we've got to take this minus 5 over to the other side, and when we do that, we must change the sign. So it becomes plus 6 and then plus 5. So if you can do that all in one step, that's great. And then you're left with the equation for a line. So we know that this is the general equation for a line that has a gradient of 3 and goes through this point, -2, 5. So there's lots of steps involved. Labelling the point x1, y1, write down the equation, then substitute into the equation the values that you have, expand the brackets, then gather all the number terms on the right hand side, and then you should end up with your equation like that. Set it out like I have with the equal signs underneath each other, and you should get it correct. So let's go through one more example of that, and we might do the bottom one. So I might just undo that. We'll just do this bottom one here. So the first steps is, number 1 is labelling. Just realised I've gone past the slide. I do want to do one more of these, which I've just realised isn't on my slide. So let me just write that out. The one in your book will do, which is 1, 8. So the point's going through 1, 8 and has a gradient of -2. So let's go through those steps again. The first thing that we're going to do is label our point x1, y1. The second point is write down the equation. The third step is substitute into the equation everything you know. So we know that this is y1, it's going to go in there. We know this is x1, it's going to go in here. We know this is the gradient, it's going to go into there. So y minus 8 equals -2, x minus 1. The next step, if you recall, is expand the brackets. -2 times x makes -2x. -2 times -1. So this is the hard thing that students often get incorrect, is the signs. Minus times a minus makes a plus. 2 times 1 makes 2. The final step is gathering all the number terms on the right hand side, and so we're left with y equals. So -2x, we've got +2, -8 on this side, so it's going to become a +8 on that side. So +2 plus 8 makes +10. And there's our equation for our line that goes through this point and has a gradient of -2. Now, I didn't mention before, but the wonderful thing about this style of question is you can double check your answers. Okay, let's substitute x equals 1 in there. -2 times 1 plus 10. See if you've done your maths correctly. So -2 times 1 makes -2. -2 plus 10 makes 8. And yes, we've done it right because we've got the same answer. So you can always double check your answers like this. So what I'd like you to do is to practice some of these questions in your book on page 40, question 13. There's a few there, so maybe do every second or third one. So page 40, question 13, every second or third one until you think that you can understand that pattern.